What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Matt Chat. My name is Kyle, and today I'm going to be picking who I think is the best Survivor player for each placement. Best player for 20th place, 19th place, and so on. A couple of important disclaimers. First, I am not considering any games from returning players. When you factor in pregame dynamics, legacies, and player history, basically the entire list could be returning players, so I had to make the choice and ultimately decided to not include them. Additionally, for seasons with Redemption Island and Edge of Extinction, I used the player's final placement. So, for instance, Caleb from Blood vs. Water was voted out at the final 7, but because of how the duels worked, he actually got ninth place. So, he will be considered for the ninth place spot. Probably not everyone would do it that way, but that's how I chose to. So, with those parameters, didn't have a lot to pick from for 20th place. I considered Marissa from Samoa. She was the first person to catch on to Russell. I considered Sekou. He was on the wrong side of a gender disparity. But I chose Ronnie Barda. I think Vince was the right target for him, and he actually had some allies. Elaine was just too well liked socially, and she wanted him out. So there he went. I think there was a way for Ronnie to make that vote work for him, but he didn't have the social finesse to pull it off. Now for 19th place, Jessica DeBen, despite being a first boot, was actually pretty decent socially and got a terrible draw with the tribe selection. Mari also was really, really close for me. I think that she had a ton of potential, but I went with Jessica Pete. Jessica had almost half the tribe on her side. She went out in a 5-4 vote, which is very rare this early in the game. She had tight strategic and personal relationships with those people as well, and if Pat wasn't medevaced, that would have been another ally in her corner. We don't know exactly what would have happened at that first vote. Pat still could have gone there, but regardless, Jessica was easily the most impressive 19th placer to me. Moving on to 18th place, and you'll notice a lot of these people towards the bottom of the list will come from larger casts, just simply due to the fact that they have more rounds to show for themselves. Like, this would be a first boot on every New Era season, and I'm certainly not picking any of them. But with that said, for the 18th spot, I am picking Morgan from Ghost Island. Morgan was in a great spot to start the game. She was loosely aligned with half the Navidi tribe, but most likely wouldn't have been in any danger. Then at the swap, she was caught in the middle of the Chris and Dom feud. Navidi had the numbers, but they were a divided group. Chris went to Ghost Island this episode, so that removed a shield in front of Morgan. And it took a really smart strategic play from someone that we'll be talking about pretty soon to get her out. She was pegged as the safe vote that would weaken Dom and Wendell, but she had a good social game and was one vote away from staying. Now for 17th place, I really considered Lucy. She organized a blind side and was idled out. It wasn't even really a good move for her in the first place, though, but still. So I'm going to pick someone who I genuinely don't think did anything wrong, and that is Chelsea Walker. Why exactly Chelsea was voted out here, I don't think I'll ever know. This is one of the biggest and most infamous examples of big movitis in Survivor history, and Chelsea did nothing to bring it upon herself. They definitely should have voted out Dean or Karishma here instead. Chelsea was well integrated within the Women's Alliance, and I think she would have been a really solid player if she got the chance to continue on. Now for number 16, this wasn't close. Shout out to Justin from season 48. He was playing well and got screwed, but this is pretty easily Stephanie Johnson. Stephanie started on the ill-fated Malolo tribe, but she was in the best spot of anybody on it. She was tight with both the women and the men, and everyone was coming to her for decisions. The way she got the information out of Jacob that his idol was fake was honestly a masterclass. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that. After the swap, there was literally nothing she could do. Michael played an idol on her, which is another plus for her game, but she was voted out right afterwards. I don't think there was much Stephanie could have done. She got swap screwed, and to me, she played the most impressive game of anyone who got 16th place on their first time playing. Now for 15th place, there are a bunch of New Era players you could pick here. Jenny, Keyshawn, and Thomas were all in consideration for me, but I picked yet another Ghost Islander, and that is James. Ghost Island is not known for having a very strong cast, but the pre-merge group is honestly really strong. James didn't start off in the best spot, though. He was the alternate target at the second tribal council and could have actually been the main target had Jacob now revealed that his idol was fake, like I just mentioned. But after the swap, James took advantage of the Chris Dom feud. He was in the middle of both sides and made the move to take out Morgan, which was an incredible move. This seemingly bought Angela's loyalty, which should have paid off for James at the second swap, but Angela reverted back to her Navidi ways and voted out James. I don't fault James at all for his elimination. He did pretty much everything he could. He showed immense strategic capabilities, outplayed Dom and Wendell. How many people can say that? And I think he's definitely the choice for the best 15th placer. All right, let's mix it up. I've only talked about 3 seasons so far. So for 14th place, the big honorable mention is Russell Swan. Not sure how far he exactly would have made it, but he was the clear leader of Glue in the pre-merge, one of the most dominant pre-merge tribes in Survivor history. But the choice for me was Michaela. Michaela only went to 2 tribal councils and only survived 1, but it was clear she had skill at the game. She was the final decision maker at the Mari vote, putting her rivalry with Figgy aside and working with her to take out a potential threat for down the road. I'm not sure if it was really the right move, but she still should have been fine. She was cool with pretty much everybody on that tribe and took none of the blame for making that move. At the swap, she was in the majority with 2 of her closer allies in Jay and Will, who made an extremely hasty move and took her out right before the merge. This is another one of the biggest examples of big move-itis. Michaela perhaps demonstrated her strategic mind a little too much when she didn't need to, but I still don't blame her for this elimination. She shouldn't have gone out here, so she's my choice for the best 14th placer. Now, the next few placements are interesting because we still get a lot of pre-jurors, but then we also start the jury in a lot of modern seasons around this time as well. For 13th place, honorable mentions go to Anna, say what you will about her, but she was swap screwed hard. Elizabeth, she was pivotal in making the Jessica vote happen, survived a dicey swap, and was just outnumbered at the merge. And then Kelly Kim obviously had some extenuating circumstances that affected her game, but she played really solid despite that. But I chose someone I really didn't want to, and that is Colton. It pains me to pick Colton, but you have to be honest. He ran the pre-merge of One World. Colton was one of the main people who took advantage of the One World twist. He made a big effort to align with the women, who weren't totally receptive to that, but it at least showed a willingness to diversify from Colton. Diverse and Colton probably aren't 2 words that should go together, but you know what I mean. At the men's first tribal council, Colton defended himself against Matt's attempt to vote him out. He had pretty much the entire tribe on his side. And then he inexplicably got the whole tribe to agree to give up immunity just so they could go to tribal and vote out the one person who Colton didn't like, which was Bill. Icky as it may have been, I have to admit how impressive it was that he got the tribe to do that. It didn't end there, though. At the swap, Colton hooked up with Alicia and once again took control of the tribe. As annoying and mean as he was, nobody really had a notion to vote him out. At least they didn't try to do anything about it. He got his way at every turn. He even found an idol. Everything was going well for him. At the final 13, he left the game due to a medical scare, and that bumps him up even more. He wasn't eliminated by a vote, and he wouldn't have been if they had lost another tribal. But there is a pretty decent chance that he gets targeted at the merge pretty early, but that's not really a concern here. We don't know. If you want to hold his exit against him, if you believe it was a quit, you're more than free to do so. But for me, I think that Colton played the best game for any 13th placer. Now for 12th place, honorable mentions go to Tracy, who was a strategic force on the fans tribe. The mayor of Slamtown, he exceeded expectations, and I really wanted to pick Jim Rice. I think he's a super underrated player. But my choice is probably one of the most forgettable players to ever make the merge, at least for most people, and that is Kelly Remington. Kelly may have genuinely been the best player on this entire cast, but we'll never know. Kelly was in the perfect spot on the blue collar tribe. She was in the majority with so many shields around her. At the swap, she was the odd person out with no blue collars with her, and could have been an easy boot. But instead, she bonded with everyone and put herself in the swing position. If they had gone to another tribal, I don't think she would have been in any danger. But she didn't have to worry about that because her entire blue-collar alliance on the other tribe decided to throw the next challenge just to keep her safe. And that was a hard challenge to throw, too. That was the one where they had to memorize the objects. They had to look like idiots to throw that challenge, but they did it anyway, just to ensure Kelly's safety, which is an amazing display of social work on her part. She was in the majority at the merge, but fell victim to Jen's idle play. Good on the no-callers for picking Kelly, honestly. I have a hard time thinking of another time when she would have been targeted, if not for right then. So for all those reasons, Kelly was the clear choice for me. Moving on to 11th place, honorable mentions go to Kelly Sharbaugh. I think she was the social core of the Galoo tribe and was rightfully targeted by Russell. Aaron Meredith played a pretty impressive game, and Sierra Wright was in a fantastic position pre-emerge but kind of ceded her control. So my choice is Josh from San Juan del Sur. Josh started off the game bonding with most people on the Coyopa tribe and subtly controlling the votes, displaying his aggressive strategic gameplay right away. He was definitely one of the standout players in the early episodes, and I thought he was the best player by far early on. I thought he was going to run the game at the time. I do think he would have been better off keeping John Rocker, but I understand his reasoning for voting him out. At the merge, Josh was the head of his alliance. He kept Alec and Wes tight, and thereby brought Keith in. He lost Baylor to her mom Missy's alliance, and vied for Jacqueline's loyalty to get the numbers. But she and John sided with Jeremy, and Josh was voted out in a 6-5 vote. Josh made his feud with Jeremy perhaps a little too obvious. It put a bullseye on him and forced him to target someone he shouldn't have in Baylor, but he dominated the pre-merge and had half the tribe on his side when he did go home, so Josh was the clear choice to me. Now for number 10, and this was a difficult choice. Quick mentions to Boston Rob, Michelle, Brenda, Vetus, and Jeremy, but the two main considerations were Savage and Marcus. Both were dominant players at the head of their respective alliances, and both were taken out in very questionable circumstances. Savage, I think, got screwed a little harder, but my ultimate choice is Marcus. I'm pretty sure Savage would win Pearl Islands without the Outcast twist, but it's not certain. I am, however, 99% sure that Marcus wins Gabon without that second swap. Marcus was the king of the Coda tribe, at the center layer of the Onion Alliance. He was the most well-liked and most central figure of that tribe. But at the second swap, he was stuck with 3 original Fong members, and it was too good of an opportunity to get him out. Had he made the merge, Coda would have had the numbers, and Marcus would have run the game to the end and easily won. In fact, there are rumors that the second swap was actually a last-minute twist added in specifically to prevent a Marcus steamroll. Not confirmed if that's true, but just the fact that it's even a rumor proves how dominant of a game Marcus was playing, and he's my choice for number 10. Alright, now for number 9. Honorable mentions go to Nate, Nayanka, Caleb, and Zeke. But my choice, people might really disagree with this one, I don't know, but I chose War Dog. I get it, he made the move on Wentworth too early, yeah, but look at the rest of his game. War Dog attended 11 tribal councils, which is almost 2 times more than the average 9th place finisher, so he had to play the game a lot more than most. He was aligned with everyone on the Mana tribe, except for Wendy. He called the shots on all their votes, specifically at the Chris vote when he recognized that the tribe needed to be unified going into the swap, as well as keeping a shield and Wentworth around. He was totally in control at the swap vote, and negotiated well with the Commas to get Wendy out. At the merge, he was on the outs, but that's because Mana was down in the numbers. He made a fantastic move in convincing Victoria and Gavin to vote out Eric. Very impressive to pull that off. He won the battle against David, and then won Rick back as an ally. Then came the infamous Wentworth blindside, which is often criticized for being too early. I've never thought it was quite as bad a move as most people think it is. His profile was way too high for him to ever make it to the end anyway. I mean, he was the next person voted out, so I guess it couldn't have been much worse, but still, I don't think he was ever going to make it to the end. It was just a byproduct of how the game went for him. He had to play too hard too early because of how often he was losing. War Dog showed immense strategic chops and survived longer than he probably should have, so that's why he's my choice for ninth place. Alright, now we really start getting into the hard ones. For 8th place, quick mentions to Dina and Chelsea. I think Dina was way ahead of her time, and Chelsea, despite being one of the quietest edits in Survivor history, was really solid from the sounds of it. But this choice came down to Shan and Tiffany, and their games are very similar. Both started on disaster tribes, both were at the very center and the main decision makers of their tribes, both were a part of the large majority at the merge, both were turned on by their closest allies, and both went home with an idol in their pocket. So that made their games pretty hard to differentiate, but I ultimately chose Shan. Pound for pound, Uwa was probably a worse tribe in terms of player quality than Yanu, but Shan's dominant pre-merge game cannot be forgotten. She made Ricard her closest ally, and the two of them ran through the tribe. Everyone came to her. Sarah went to Shan to save her at the first vote. Brad shared all of his secrets with her. She made JD give her his extra vote twice, and she positioned herself between Ricard and Genie at the last pre-merge vote. Sticking with Ricard proved to be a mistake in the long run, but I think she made the right choice when it came to making allies at the merge and navigating strategically. She made an unbreakable bond with Liana and pretty much stole Liana away from Yase, which was impressive socially, and when the time came for her to go, it was really a vote out of respect more than anything. I also think Shan was outplayed by an overall slightly better group of players than Tiffany was. It's close, not to mention the fact that Kenzie randomly wanted to vote Tiffany out as well, so for all those reasons, Shan is my choice for 8th place. Now for 7th place, the honorable mentions list is starting to get a little long now. Let me rattle off some names. Alex, Leanne, Stephanie. I mean, she outlasted her entire tribe. You have to be in consideration. Gary, Hayden, and Lauren Rimmer. These people all played strong games, but I chose Caroline. If I was going to play Survivor, I would want to model my game after Caroline. That is exactly how I would want to play. In the majority alliance the entire time, subtly influencing the game socially and reining people in to do what she wanted. She worked with the big threats at the merge with the intention of using them as shields and cutting them later. She played the middle a lot, but was never targeted for it, and she managed to take out her closest ally and actually come out on top in arguably an even stronger position. You could say she played the Operation Italy round suboptimally. She let Andy be in the majority split and turned down the idol play from Sue. But she also had a lot working against her that round. Rachel won immunity when she would have been the target, and Caroline had a clear path to the end, to a win. Barring Rachel winning out, I think Caroline likely wins the game if she makes it past Final 7. So I really love Caroline's game, and she's my choice for 7th place. All right, next is 6th place, and this might be my favorite group of all of them. 6th place is absolutely stacked. Colleen, Amy, Parvati, Stacy, Tasha, Davey, Danny, Omer, Cody, Drew, and Andy were all 6th place finishers. This is a very strong and competitive group. And with all these big names, it might be surprising and controversial with who I chose, but I went with Victoria from Edge of Extinction. Victoria is most known for pulling off the Aubrey blindside, which was amazing, but don't think that's the only highlight on her resume. Victoria was the champion of the anti-returnee unit on Kama. Normally, this type of person would be the first voted out on a captain season, but Victoria had the ammunition to make it happen. She also proved that she was a flexible player, which allowed her to be included in all the moves and be in the know. She voted in the majority every single time, working with all sides flawlessly and subtly influencing the direction of the game. An example of that was at the Final 7, when she suspected that Rick had an idol and made Ron the real target, convincing Lauren and Gavin to vote for him, which was kind of an innovative strategy. I think Edge of Extinction saw an evolution in strategy, a marked evolution in strategy, and Victoria was one of the main drivers of that. She also had extremely high win equity. I'm pretty sure she beats everyone except for Rick in the end, but I don't think anyone was really going to let her get there. She may not have been as dominant as Omer or as flashy as Davey, but she played a well-balanced, steady game and had higher win equity than most people in her archetype. Plus, she had to deal with a bunch of stuff, returnees, Edge of Extinction, so Victoria's my pick. Okay, now we've reached the top 5, and I'm going to tighten up the honorable mentions list now. I can't just be naming everybody. The people who were legitimately in consideration were Sierra. Lauren was really close to being my choice. She's probably second. And Carla, Maria, and Genevieve I thought were all worthy of mentions as well. But I had decided to pick Shan's partner in crime, Ricard. Ricard isn't the person I thought I'd pick when I started this list, but when I really thought about it, Ricard played a very, very strong game. We saw most of Uwa's dynamic from Shan's perspective, but in hindsight, the proceedings actually benefited Ricard more. Shan knew Ricard was a bigger threat than Jeannie, but Ricard made himself so important to her that she never turned against him. He was in a potentially dicey spot at the merge, but you can blame the Hourglass for that, and he won immunity anyway. He was part of the majority, but allowed Shan to grow her target larger and larger. He made a great move to vote out Nasir when he did, gaining the loyalty of Erica and Heather, which he also had a deep bond with Xander as well, and all of this allowed him to make the move against Shan at the final 8, and he and Erica were able to convince Danny and Deshawn to turn against her, putting them in a bad spot. Ricard built a new majority through this, keeping him safe at the final 7. He would have likely been the boot at the final 6 if he didn't win immunity, so he got some good fortune there. But if it weren't for a last-second challenge advantage at the final 5, he likely beats Erica in that challenge, and he at least has a chance at fire at that point. And if he sits at the end, he wins no matter who he's against. Ricard was a physical and strategic powerhouse, overcoming a disaster tribe and outplaying the person who seemed like the front runner to win for most of Season 41, and I think he is the best member of the 5th place club. Now for 4th place, we have a lot of final jurors here. This was maybe the hardest placement to pick, and I bet you'll disagree with who I chose. The players in consideration were Cirie, Malcolm, David, Devin, Lauren, Jesse, and Carson. As you can see, this group was almost impossible to pick from, but of all those choices, I went with Devin. Allow me to make the case. Devin was perfectly positioned at nearly every step of the way in HHH. In control of the Hustlers tribe along with Ryan, was alone at the swap but made a great bond with Ashley and would have been the swing vote if he didn't lose his vote. Then disappeared into the majority at the merge where he made a great bond with Ben, and that was a key piece for Devin to step out and take over the game at the final 9. Lauren gets credit for the JP blindside, but Devin was in on that, and it was his idea for Ben to be the secret agent, which allowed Devin to get information from all sides. He knew pretty much everything that was going on at all times, and had all options open to him. He cornered Ryan and Chrissy, leaving them nowhere to turn but to him, and they made a loyal Final 3 deal that would have held up if not for Ben's idols and the surprise fire-making challenge. And let's not forget about his heady move to put a vote on Dr. Mike at the Final 5. A big reason why I picked Devin over the likes of Jesse and Cirie is because he had a true path to the end and likely a win. If not for the fire-making challenge, which had never been seen before, he easily is in the Final 3. We don't know for sure what would have happened in a Devin, Chrissy, Ryan Final 3. That's one of the great mysteries of Modern Survivor. But my strongly educated guess is that Devin pulls it out, especially if he's able to articulate his game and the intricacies within it. I wouldn't blame you if you picked any of the other people I mentioned, but I firmly believe that Devin played the best game by a 4th place finisher. Okay, now on to 3rd place, and this is a weird one. We have a mix of fallen angels who would have won the game, and a bunch of 0 vote finalists. There is a stark divide within this group. I feel like I haven't talked about the old school players much at all in this video, but I will here. Honorable mentions are Lex, Kathy, Johnny Fairplay, and Amanda, who despite being a losing finalist, played a very strong strategic game, and I think there's quite a gap between her and Courtney that season anyway. But I went with the man who laid the groundwork for Modern Survivor, Rob Cesternino. Perhaps Rob's biggest strength was his ability to fit in. He's an archetype that could have easily been an early target, but he wasn't. He was Butch's firewood buddy. He tolerated Roger's antiquated values. He let Matthew think he was on a secret mission. And that was just with the men. He used his personality and humor to win over Jenna and Heidi and let their guards down, and he bonded with Dina on a strategic level. He knew the right way to connect with each person individually and make them feel important. And it wasn't just him having fun, it was intentional strategy on his behalf. He by far got the most confessionals in the Amazon, so the edit may have given him credit for some moves that may have not been warranted, I'm not sure. But starting from the final 7 on, he had the game under control. The blindside on Alex was perfect, one of the biggest power shifts in Survivor history. I think over time, people have come to realize that the Christie blindside wasn't actually that great of a move. I think it's somewhat negligible. He had the majority either way and got burned by Jenna's immunity run, so maybe a mistake to not take her out, but voting out Christie accomplished 2 things. It guaranteed Jenna and Heidi's jury votes, or at least it would have if he had made it to the end, and it also prevented a Christie Matt Butch final 3 from solidifying, which was a very real possibility. I don't know for sure if all of that was part of his calculations, but still, he had the majority. Now, the one quibble you could have here was that he was working towards a final 3 where both guys were probably going to take each other to the end. Butch and Matt were going to go to the end together. But that's an issue with all of these Final Angel figures. Almost no one was taking them to the end. And even if that's true, well, let's look at it then. Matthew probably pulls the same stunt where he steps down knowing both guys will take him to the end, and at that point, Rob almost assuredly beats Butch in an endurance challenge, votes him out, and beats Matt in a 4-3 vote. He beats pretty much everybody at the end, or at least everybody he had a semblance of desire to go to the end with. For all these reasons, Rob is my choice for the best third placer. Now we've reached the top 2, starting with second place. Everybody here is a runner-up. They all fell short of convincing the jury to vote for them over someone else. I got 4 honorable mentions. Rob's fellow know-it-all, Stephen Fishbach. Russell Hantz, as controversial as he is, there's no denying he dominated Samoa. Aubrey, when you're at the center of a heated Survivor debate that's gone strong for 10 years and counting, you have to be mentioned. And then Charlie, who played the best losing game of the new era, in my opinion. But to me, the choice was clear. It's Dominic. Dominic was closer than anyone to winning the game. He literally tied the winner. I think he was responsible for recruiting most of the allies to his and Wendell's alliance. Most people at Final Tribal credited him for bringing them in. And that's really impressive because Dom is not most known for his social game. He threw the last pre-merge challenge to get rid of Bradley, which I thought was a mistake at the time, but I was wrong on that. It took out a strategic threat that could have been a problem later. Dom easily won the battle against Chris at the merge. If you had to have one big knock on Dom's game, it would be his public feud with Chris, but like I said, he came out on top, and somehow wasn't a huge target after that. He leaned into the Navidi Strong business, and had his side alliance with Laurel and Donathan that stopped him from being targeted by the Malolos. In fact, Wendell was the one taking more of the heat throughout the game. Michael wanted him out, and he drew the wrath of the women at the final 8. Dom's name never even came up until the final 7, when Donathan finally snapped. More people were coming up to Dom throughout the game for strategic consultation than they were going to Wendell, and to me, that's a definitive sign who was in more control of the game. And then we get to his move at the final 6, where he pulls off the riskiest bluff in Survivor history. Is that fair to say? Sebastian and Donathan had a plan, all set to take him out with the idol in his pocket, but Angela inexplicably came to Dom and tipped him off. Crazy to me that Angela felt so connected to him for her to do that. Instead of playing it safe and using his idol, Dom used his fake idol to scare everyone away, even going so far as to get up before the votes were cast and give it to Jeff. Mind you, this is before he saw Ben actually do this in season 35. He needed to pull this off, because if he had to use his idol, he goes home at the final 5. You could qualm with the way he came across here. He looked very cocky and overbearing, but that was part of the act. He really needed to sell it in order for him to survive, and unfortunately, it seemed to come at the cost of some jury votes. At the final 4, the optimal move would have certainly been to take Wendell on and fire, but I can't blame Dom too much, especially because he stood a real chance against Wendell at the end. He got Chris and Desiree's votes, which came as a huge shock. And one thing I'll never get is how Angela was gonna vote for Laurel, but then switched her vote to Wendell just because he happened to be looking at her when she got up to vote, which is such a hilarious reason. Had she still voted for Laurel, Dom would have won in a 5-4-1 vote. But as played, the vote tied, and Laurel gave the win to Wendell. Dominic is a modern legend, came closer to winning than any other runner-up, and he's my choice for second place. Alright, now we're at first place. We have all the winners. There are too many honorable mentions to name. Maybe I'll do a winner ranking at some point if you're curious who was close to consideration. But my choice for the best winning game played by a first-time player is, and has always been, Kim Spradlin. Kim dominated the game from start to finish with almost no interruptions in between. Pre-swap, there wasn't much to say. Courtney was medevaced and Nina was a consensus boot. She had a very favorable swap where she was swapped with her two closest allies, Sabrina and Chelsea, as well as all the strongest guys. But she bonded with them so well that she was in the best spot going into the merge, especially after Colton left. Her true allegiance was to the women, and she turned the men against each other. She got in Troyzan's head, and he didn't realize it until it was too late. And Jay was like undyingly loyal to her, telling her everything. With Kim, it's really the little things that make her game great. She really made a heady move to throw out Christina's name when Jay was about to tell Michael that he was going to be blindsided. She got the information from Jay that Troyzan was going to idle her out. Somehow, someway, she was safe every round, had total control, and her position only got stronger as time went on. None of the women were ever going to turn on her. She had 2 separate Final 3 deals and could go any way she wanted. Kim was also physically dominant, tying the record for the most individual immunities won for women in a season, and she didn't need any of them. I usually don't factor in the physical game much, but when you can survive either way, it's only a bonus and makes her game even more impressive. Kim over time has gotten some criticism for getting a lucky swap and playing against bums, but sometimes playing against bad players can be just as challenging as playing against good ones, and regardless, it's hard to find a more dominant game in Survivor history than Kim in One World. And there you have it. That is who I think is the best player for every placement. This isn't a perfect list by any means, so let me know what you think below. Make a case for somebody else for one of these placements. Like and subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time.